So without any further ado, let's go to Seven, who has been having a little bit of problems on Block Talk. At least that's what a little bird told me. The little bird could be wrong, though. Seven, welcome back.
Oh, it is definitely amazing to be forward, as I always say, with you two once again. I mean, I really, really am elated to always be on this show. I think we have quite a bit to cover for this 2 hours, and I'm feeling really relaxed. So I know that we're going to be cruising along through the galaxy tonight.
Excellent, excellent. Well, first of all, tell us, are you having problems with the archiving system over where you're at now?
To my understanding, no. I mean,
Okay.
Of course, I don't go back into my own archives and listen to my own shows, so I wouldn't know. But I haven't got any people telling me about it. No, not that I'm aware of.
Well,
I'm sure there's a great deal to censor in there. I'm not sure if they're able to keep up with the censoring as much as we keep putting out more and more stuff.
There's some shows that I don't listen to. I only listen to the really good ones.
Yeah, and well, he usually does it like right before we go to bed. He'll say, "Hey, can you get my computer?" And I'll go get the computer, and then he'll turn on a show that I've already heard, but it's okay. And then he'll like fall asleep after the first 10 minutes or so. And then the next day, he doesn't remember that he's already heard this. So he plays the same thing again.
Well, I want to absorb the information. My mind doesn't work like yours, where it just absorbs everything just by looking at it. Excuse me.
Oh, but you're so much better at other things than I am.
Yeah.
I couldn't put a network together. You know me.
Yeah. Anyway, Seven, what have you been working on your website?
I mean, we've basically been doing a complete overhaul. Like, we cleaned out a lot of stuff. And, we've been up now for 3 years. We're actually celebrating our 3-year anniversary tomorrow. And we hit 5,000 members about 2 days ago. So we're going in there and we're starting some new groups, and we're just getting in a lot of the cream content because we just want to get, right to the point in all of the areas of knowledge. So that's what we've been doing, and just adding in some new stuff and getting the functionality up. But things are really, really nice over there now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff over there, the largest library on the internet that I know of that hosts esoteric books. There's, of course, the radio show. There's even somewhat of a TV station where we just send a bunch of videos in and just run them, but all related to the resistance. But we have a few different fronts that we're working on. So things are definitely expanding, and we're utilizing this energy that's been coming through to just keep pushing things, and we've seen the manifestation behind what we've been projecting.
Excellent. Let me ask you this. Any thoughts on Hollow Earth? I know you were tuning in for a little bit of the first show, and as a matter of fact, somebody wanted me to ask you if there's any connection to the Thule Society.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand that when people talk about the Hollow Earth theory, it's just they're running off once again on the tangent that such knowledge is pertaining to the external world. And really, you have to map it out. You have to find it in the internal world first, or what we call the innerverse. So the Hollow Earth, or the masters of the Hollow Earth, the ascended masters, were masters at understanding how their body worked, like how the organs worked in conjunction with the planets, etc. And so when you use the term hollow earth, if you knew earth was your body, then you would just say the hollow body. And then, of course, it's populated. There's something intelligent in there. I would hope so. And so this is really where such knowledge gets introduced on an external level, and it makes for a fascinating story that everyone resonates with. But when you really get to the core of the story, which I have, and you get to the core of the knowledge and the people who are involved, et cetera, you find that when they're talking, sure, there's things physically inside of our earth, but when you're mixing the ET component in with the high levels of knowledge and advanced races, you're actually talking about the inner verse, and to be able to basically implode yourself.
Very interesting. I never really thought about that.
Well, and the central sun, reminds me of the central sun, and I guess you could say the heart chakra or the pineal. I mean,
is that the case, though, or is it a case of as above, so below?
The sun is actually located within our stomach. It's right there by the Dantian chakra. And and this is also why you get a lot of lure of individuals who worshipped a particular deity, because that deity always corresponds to a particular chakra. So what you're generally dealing with back in the old days is the priests had mastered that chakra. and could do all the things that were associated with that. So, of course, the one who really accomplished the mission here on Earth had a full mastery of their entire system, i.e. master of the universe, but in this case, master of the interverse.
Is that the case, or is it a case of as above, so below?
Well, again, this system is, like we talked about last show with the phi situation, you're going to find it on a harmonic scale with the matching octave. So there is a above, so below nature to it. But if you're really looking at it, because we have a tendency to see things 2D, when you're looking at it, it's more of like, it has several components or several edges that, equal different states. So even when we're talking about Earth, you have the core, which would look like what you see the physical Earth as, but then you have all of these layers on the outside, not so much as in the inside, but on the outside, where entities live because their etheric consistency, their frequency, etc., is more in the ethereal area rather than in the material area, which is, of course, as you get more into the center, things get more denser until eventually you get to the point of the 0 point, or was just really a magical door, basically a jump gate within the center of each planet, so that way you can get to the next one. So how this would manifest on our physical body is you have these chakra centers, and then you have their gates. And once you can access, especially certain ones, you can get to the other ones.
What do you think about this pyramid that they found underneath the Bermuda Triangle?
I must have just read your mind when you said pyramid, because I was just going to say he's going to say something about pyramids. I know it's coming.
There you go.
Well, there's a lot of pyramids under the water, and that's what happens with this planet is that every time that there's, a new one where they redo things again, you'll find that in the entire planet, there's no place that has ever been completely out of water. Every place has been underwater at a certain point. So what you would have going on is like the pyramids that we're looking at now within Egypt used to be underwater too. And the civilization that was there during that time were in the pyramids in Japan. But the reason why this happens like this is because, of course, it is the pyramids that now is the structure of many belief systems, especially Christianity. It's the Egyptian religions and belief systems. So what happens is that no matter what race is going through that planetary system for their incarnation experience, when they reach the level of sentience, they'll eventually ask themselves, what are those huge pyramid striped structures hanging out of the earth? Like, what is that over there? And then once they get to a certain level of sentience, they'll start doing the measurements. And then that will start to allow them to gain the knowledge of exactly how Earth works, how Earth is positioned, where it's at, etc. See what I mean? So
right.
if the pyramids in Egypt become covered with water around that time on the opposite side of Earth, there's more than likely pyramids over there. I have a chart of how many pyramids are actually on the Earth completely. But then those will be exposed, and then the people will once again go into the belief system that is emitting from the pyramid, because a lot of people talk about the harmonics within the pyramid, but they act like it's like not moving or it used to be that way. It's still that way. So if you're in the vicinity of these temples, these structures, they emit the program, for better lack of words, that we follow here on Earth until you start to become an individual that is aware of this, and then you start to kind of shift off of auto, which they call waking up.
Roundabouts, is it in the hundreds, the thousands? How many pyramids are on the Earth?
From the chart that I seen, there was approximately, it was about 1,000 pyramids that were very large, though. And it's clear that they're almost like the acupuncture of Earth, where they're sitting on the meridian points, very similar to what you would see in Chinese acupuncture. They're sitting on certain meridian points in order to create. A lot of people talk about this as being electrical, even though I believe the word El and Elohim and all of those words tie in together, the elect, etc. But this energy is more like a pranic, if you want to use a term, like a pranic energy. It's assimilable to the body. While electricity, which that's why the Dynamo Jack Qigong master said it's not electricity. So I don't know why you guys are trying to test it with the electrical device. It's Qi. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about Qi and Qi levels, then you need the proper equipment to measure that. And there's many instances where people say, well, the Earth's energy grid is down. No, it's not. It's just the equipment that they're using to measure it. It's not going to read as anything going through there. There's, entire structure and network that's wired together that keeps this entire construct together.
The one that they discovered under the Bermuda Triangle is supposedly made out of some kind of crystalline or glass-like substance, which differs greatly from the other pyramids, at least that are exposed here in South America and Egypt and other places.
It's almost like this comes from an Atlantean or a Lemurian kind of time, definitely, because they were said to have used that kind of chi energy.
Sounds like the beginning of Conan. But serious, I mean, these crystal palaces and crystal kingdoms have definitely been, see, it's just like this. When you're dealing with crystals, you're of course dealing with, they also have to be charged too. So that's why the thing about crystals, a lot of people, they use crystals and they look to benefit from crystals and whatever crystals say in the book that they can offer, but they don't realize that it has to be a cyclic energy that is transferred. And you have to visualize this with the crystal, where once you're pulling energy from it, you're also giving it energy from your body. And there's a cycle that goes on there. And that's the only way that a crystal can actually turn on to really reveal what exactly it is. And so when you're talking about the crystal kingdom, once a crystal's powered up, it does disappear. But disappears to our physical eye. But the structure or the kingdom itself still remains there. So what we're talking about is things that once they reach higher frequency, they become invisible to us. So I think we also call that death. Once a person dies, then the soul is released from the body, goes immediately into the higher frequency, because the soul is a higher frequency substance anyway. And then we can't see it at that point. But the ones who can see the other frequencies can. And so the entire thing, like I talked about on the last show about, where does the psychic ability come from anyway? There's a part of that comes from genetics, but there's a major part of that comes from conductivity. Because the genetics, realistically, everyone has a gift. This is very, very precise information. Everyone has an ability or a chakra that they can use. But their conductivity, meaning the actual ability to power up that chakra to its level to where you can see what it does vividly, which is asking for a lot of energy to be coursing through your body. The conductivity is destroyed by, the diet, or basically the abuse to the mind, the body, and the soul, the MBS system, which is more like a ship that has to be functioning correctly in order for a person to see this stuff, so that way they don't have to go and just run around all day thinking that this is something that can't happen. This is something that's not happening.
Well, you've said the word crystal over and over again, and that brought to mind, of course, the crystal skulls. Have you looked into those at all, and is there any relation?
Yes. I mean, really, when you look deeper into the Popol Vuh and many of the Mayan codex, which we feature on the website under the 2012 tab, what you'll find you'll find that the entities that originally began this, which many of them, this sector, this particular time period, we can't say they began, the major thing. We won't give anything that much credit these days. But these beings we understand to be from Venus. And because of that, because their entire texts are talking about this, they talked about that there was a major sacrifice. If you notice, people are very, very deep into sacrifice, because they inherit through sacrifice what comes next. And it's almost like if you kind of like, in their culture, if you sacrifice yourself, then you have now basically set yourself up to receive something later on in the future. So what they did is they said that the chief of them, the one that originally brought the original string of them here, sacrificed itself. And the only thing that remained, its body, it said it sacrificed its body in order to create what we're calling Earth now. But the only thing that remained of First Father, as they say, is his head. And of course, there were different fathers. There wasn't just one. And I don't even think these were men, to tell you the truth, just by how we think of father. I think these were androgynous beings. And the only reason why they're calling them father is because they're like, it just means primary. Even the word father doesn't mean the same thing to them as it does to us. It's an entirely different word. And it really just means more of the one who brought us here. It doesn't really specifically say it was a male or a female, more so than it says it was an alien. So this is what we're dealing with the crystal skulls, is you're dealing with, if they're dealing with the authentic ones, because of course there's many different inauthentic ones, you're dealing with that piece that was set up in the temple, in a pyramid. Many of them are here in Guatemala. But they set up these temples and they put it there so that it could still basically, it's still there. The entities themselves, it's very interesting to me. It's almost, sometimes it's funny to me, sometimes it's terrifying, but the reality is that most of these entities that we've been talking about are still here and are still doing things, most of the time managing their entire biorhythm, or the people who still correspond to them. But what we're having a problem with, the major disconnection really comes on a physical level, because if you look, every country really has borders. And let's say a particular place like Colombia, people in Colombia can't come out of Colombia and go to, let's say Brooklyn or go to London. So this means that the essence that they have to give to everyone that we all would need to be collected again, they can't give because there's a border there. And so when we start to drop some of these borders, which the internet is a major move at dropping borders, because we can still now text them.
Right.
But it's about now us communicating and getting this. I heard someone type in the chat box the theory that Earth may be a star. Yeah, Earth is a star. Once the people connect and they start to charge up, if you were watching this from outside of Earth, it would look like it started to light up and get brighter and brighter and brighter. It's definitely catchy. This pranic energy is the Shakti, as they call it. You can transfer it to individuals like high yogas or high lamas or whatever they call themselves, can transfer this energy to to individuals that are around them. So what happens if a person went into this state naturally? Let's say they went into a higher frequency because of freeing up a lot of things within their system. If they touch someone, that person goes through the experience too. They go up frequencies. And I've seen this happen. And so that's why I always remain an optimist about this environment, because I know that really only it takes one of these babies to come out. Sometimes we count on the adults so much and them figuring this whole thing out with a couple of Zeitgeist films. But the reality is, I mean, one of these babies, since I've seen the activated state before within myself, one of these babies could easily come out activated and start a chain reaction within the entire planet and wake up the entire Kundalini of the planet. Or we could do it ourselves. So just like there's that as above, so below nature, that means on so many different levels, we can catalyze the entire system.
What do you think about the idea of prayer, positive prayer, affecting energetically the outcome of a situation?
Very similar to cloud bursting. Once you get a group of individuals together to make any type of confirmation, whether it be positive or negative, it will manifest. Like these are just common laws of the universe. They don't really adhere to the good and evil thing that we've just inherited. There's no good and evil, more so there's what comes next. So individuals get together and they do pray for positive things, and there's individuals that get together and pray for negative things. What we do have to understand is the word pray means to hunt, like predator and prey. So what literally happens is that if you're still asking for material things to occur, the only things that can really make that happen are corporeal beings. And now remember, I think the only thing that Earth is lacking at this point is a complete classification of how many different entities live on these different levels. And so I'm sure if I don't do it myself, someone will begin to publish and continuously update a classification of species documentation. But what happens here is that when you have these other entities, energies affecting the environment that we're living in, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a little bit. I was going to get into something else, and I think we're probably a little too early in the conversation to get that deep in it, but we will get to it because I know Chris likes to talk about the extraterrestrials a little bit. I think Cherie told me that, he likes to get that whole thing figured out, and I've definitely got the whole thing figured out as far as what's going on with the ETs and what they're doing here on Earth, the different factions of ETs.
Well, let's get into that because we're skipping the bottom of the hour break, so we've got clear until the top of the hour.
Okay. Well, the thing is that a lot of times, first thing the person uses to determine if there's an ET or not, or whether it's benevolent or malevolent. And this pretty much shuts down a lot of getting extra information about what exactly they're doing, where are they coming from. Because once a person determines that something's malevolent, they tend to stay away from all their literature and things of that nature. So what happens is that what I've discovered with the quote unquote extraterrestrials is that they are like a family that are ensuring that their family can keep living. So it's very, if you notice that most people are still in a somewhat of a diaspora, meaning they're not in the country that they were originally or originated in or indigenous from. And because of that, we have this only opportunity to either connect with the individuals that are around us somehow, or to ultimately suffer the disadvantages of when you are kind of like solo, for better lack of words, in this whole situation, and you need major things to be done, but you really don't have any connections with soul groups, soul families, etc., because you're one of the individuals that are basically been routed, as they call it, even in it's a military technique or also a spiritual technique to route someone's forces, meaning that you go into their tribe and you don't let them all stay together. You ship them to different parts of the empire. And Persia did this, Rome did this. So what you have is those are, of course, not Egyptians out there in Egypt. That's not even really the name of the place. Those are not Hebrews out there in the land of Canaan. So this situation that we've been dealing with has not fared us very well, because the ETs stick in their family groups. Like, for instance, when you look at a bee, the bees don't really look different. It's like, there's no, this bee has this kind of equipment, or this bee has these kind of shoes on. There's nothing like that. They're all in a hive mind. So that structure has been running for a prolonged period of time. It's of actual frequency. So all the bees look out for each other. So humans, on the other hand, we have so many different variations that we're conscious of. We seem to appear like we have a vast array of different kinds of humans. So what I'm saying here is that with the extraterrestrial beings, they have been utilizing humanity because humanity is a major resource, but because of their ignorance, they have not been able to really become what they call after warp. If you notice on Star Trek, and I'm going to get to a point here. It may sound like I'm way out here, but I'm going to tell you. On Star Trek, if you notice, when they judge a race, they say either it's pre-warp, meaning before they discovered how to warp, or after. And what this means is that, of course, after you discover warp, which is to move very fast and to move through time, everything changed. You discover all sorts of things, all sorts of knowledge. So what is warping for us? Warping for us is to be able to have the knowledge that of our consecutive lifetimes that we've existed here on Earth, and to also have access to all of the information in our immediate universe. Then we would warp on a spiritual level. So humanity is in a state of pre-warp because they don't even understand, for better lack of words, that we can warp. And Chris, me and you talked about this on the last show. There are substances that clearly show you can warp, but what you need more of is a map.
Right.
Which is
right.
the next step. So notice how humanity is taking these baby steps through becoming an advanced civilization. So we have to give ourselves because a lot of times when we think of ourselves as very advanced, we beat up ourselves for having all these problems like, bombing other countries and all these different things, no peace, because we're thinking that we're such an advanced race. But when we start thinking that, well, you just came out of the darkness, the Kali Yuga age, light is just dawning on this whole thing. Basically, knowledge is just now starting to become available. Then it kind of answers a lot of the questions on why we have not implemented certain things. So I definitely commend many of the individuals such as yourself and Sharik continuously coming forth with getting their brains worked out. Maybe people don't have the details figured out at times about what's going on with the Nephilim and the Anunnaki and the moon, etc. But even entertaining it, just putting it in there and start moving it around is so much better than trying to figure out what Rihanna is doing.
Well, the problem that we run into, though, and I said this last night when we were speaking with Clyde, is the more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. And I think it's a never-ending cycle that we're in, at least here on this physical plane, that we just keep on learning, and then more and more doors open up, and then that just creates these huge rooms in front of us, and then we navigate through these rooms. Then we finally find another door, and we're like, okay, we're out. Oh, shoot. No, we're just in another bigger room.
Right. I mean, it's multiple levels, basically, or when it clicks.
Yeah.
Click for you get to another level, and then you're like, but that means
the ones who think they have it figured out are the ones that I worry about.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we want to figure this out from that state, meaning that some people think of it as a goal, and then once they figure everything out, then that's going to be the end. But there is no end. So what we're really looking at is how to meld it, basically, how to be more hands-on with it, especially your own reality. Like becoming immune to what else is going on around you, even though they may be kicking up turmoil. And I believe that's also where the term resistance comes from, because it's like your immunity system too. Like, are you always affected by what the government's doing? If you're on another level, another frequency, then you can't be affected by what the government's doing by universal law. And surely universal law trumps draconian law, and they know it.
Right.
So, I mean,
Absolutely.
The straw man got so close.
Right. Natural
You know,
law. I mean, you're absolutely right. But we've veered so far away from it, and they've brainwashed us to believe that natural law just doesn't have any place in this society, and it's draconian law, and that's all that it's about.
Right.
And even draconian law, even that term comes from the word Draco.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I always chime in about, if they use terms like that, it lets you know that they know that there is a draconian system and that there's a hierarchy to this. But, and that's also what lets us know that. I think this type of information should be empowering for people. It should not terrify people. But it tells us that we have this more expansive story, or basically reasons on why things have not gone exactly well. See, most people are just looking for, like, they need to hear for one moment something that really quells their biggest disturbances about why they've continuously found failures in areas in life.
Right.
And one of the major things with us right now is just getting to the point of, like, okay, look, all of the past stuff it's really about an illusion, because if you can't bring it to me, then it doesn't exist. So here's another thing. I really want to talk about the illusion, because the term illusion and Illuminati are sometimes tied together for real reasons.
Illusionati is what I've been calling them.
Yeah, exactly. The Illuminati.
Yeah.
But just Illu, or the 8-pointed star from Sumeria. I think people have gotten off track a little bit to identifying where these beings are coming from, because Anu is from the moon. So if we're still dealing with the moon group, for better lack of words, no wonder why things have not progressed that much further than the moon when you talk about how close it is in the proximity to Earth. When we're expanding, we have to be really far out there and in the unknown regions in order to make our bubble bigger. And this is also what we were talking about on the last show, is in regards to the limitation of how we think creates a certain size bubble or auric field around us. So when someone has more expansive knowledge or more expansive belief in their existence, they can envelop you in it. And this is one of those things. And again, this is not, we should push out the positive and negative, and just imagine someone who is very confident, such as a star, singer, and actor, that continuously gets pumped up by individuals until their bubble envelops everyone in that concert. Now, those with a third eye can sit in the parking lot and watch it all go down. That's what I'm saying by when not utilizing certain tools that we were equipped with. It's like a scorpion has a stinger. There's these beings, many of them are equipped with their protection. So what is the human's protection? Well, when I flip in the ancient books, it appears to me to be the Uraeus, because the Uraeus connects with the planet Uranus. A lot of people talk about Saturn a lot, but they don't realize Saturn's father is Uranus. And because of all of this nature to the serpent, like we talked about last time, then there was a third eye ability that gave a person a level of protection from multiple levels, whether they had shot a laser. But what I believe is that it shot a laser more like laser vision. You could just see what was going to happen in the future so far away, you can totally avoid anything that you felt did not resonate with you.
Right.
So it didn't mean you had to go into some conflict. You could continuously avoid the conflicts, which are like hitting asteroids and meteorites compared to, that's what we're talking about. So if you could fly unimpeded through your consciousness, that's what on the physical level actually activates you. When you don't have the short circuit of the duality of the opponent that is now attempting to face you, whether it's society, the government, the aliens, whatever, when they step up as opponents. And that's why when you see the ancient pictures of the messiahs, because there was tons of them, they generally are marked with emblems that are like, for what a soldier would go through a battlefield, when he goes through a battlefield, he accomplishes certain things and they give him a badge. These messiah images had badges on them to show the different levels that they had already graduated through. And in many cases, those badges were stars and geometry as an indicator that I conquered Saturn. I conquered Venus, but not in a way that we see conquering, because we always think of conquering as a conflict. But the reality is that you could be challenged to love. People that really hate, man, they're hurting with this challenge to love.
Right.
It's just kicking their butts. You see what I mean? So there's different challenges as you move up through these chakra centers. I just believe that what the part that's missing now is that we used to move through these together, because it's really similar to going into unknown territory. You're going into the abyss. No one has been there. This is where the solution is, because we didn't find the solution. So that means it must be in there. So this is like logical reasoning. And then once we start stepping into these platforms of logical reasoning, then we can be active, because there is an active inactivate. It means you actually go and physically do something, whether even it's talking on the radio, but physically do something that actually lifts up the frequency.
Let me ask you this. In a couple of weeks, we are going to have a guest on who's writing a book right now, who's just wrapping it up. And he asked me not to say, who he is at the moment until he gets the book out. But his hypothesis is that the pineal gland is actually an implant by the draconian reptilian beings, and that our chakra system is how they control us. And activating that chakra system and using the pineal actually puts us under their control. Have you heard anything like that? Because when he was telling me this, I couldn't go along with it, but I will have him on the show so he can tell me about it.
I definitely have heard this. And so his theory is not his. Actually, it comes from ancient knowledge, which is about even individuals who at a certain point had to lock their chakras. Here's the thing. What we have to realize is that I always say disbelievers block their own way, meaning that when you're in a situation like what's going on Earth, the last thing you want to start doing is throwing under the bus what may get you out of here. Now, generally, whatever put you here, you're going to have to go back through that to get out, especially if there's only one way out. Now, this Earth is a matrix, it's a womb. There's a major entry point to the womb. A woman has a womb. You can see she has a major entry point. So all of the psychonauts knew you have to go through that point in order for you to be able to actually get a pass to the universe, whatever you want to term it. So what happens is that the first thing you must confront is basically some know it as the queen of this Earth, which is very alive. Like, we walk on Earth all the time and act like Earth does not exist, just ignoring Earth. And we see life growing from Earth and we just act like Earth is a hologram of dead kilobits. But it's more to it than that. If Earth is the hologram of dead kilobits, then you are too. The reality is that let's deal with what is tangible and what we can trace. And what we can trace is that we came in through Earth's womb. Now, most people end up becoming an enemy of Earth after a while when trained in draconian techniques and things of this nature.
Yes.
So what happens is, which is indoctrinated through cartoons and other things. So what happens is when that person has to face mother again, mother does not, in this case, it's going to give you exactly what you put in. You reap what you sow. That's the only way these systems can stay in balance. That's why the Egyptians showed it as they would weigh your heart. What they're really saying is that anytime you hit a gate, and you're looking for passage, you're now going to have to confront a major part of yourself. So what happens is, when we have built up the draconians, oh my goodness, if you could see how many other beings that are out there that make draconians look like grasshoppers. The reality is that if we put the draconians in control by saying that if we activate our chakras and the draconians control us, yes, if you activate the crown chakra with any belief, it's going to happen. That's what the crown chakra is about. Mm-hmm. It's about when you know where you're going, now you can get there. But if you think you're going into the hands of fear, you're going there. And that's where it's at. And because fear is an illusion, it's made of like a steam, dark gas. Anything can metamorphosize through it when you think. And so you have individuals that have turned on certain parts of their chakra centers through karate and different things of that nature. And then they get this negative experience because what they flipped over to the opposite side of the planet. Like Venus is upside down, so it makes it an upside down pentagram. There's an upside down or a dark side to everything. So when they amplify through their ignorance of how they approach the knowledge that took men 20, 30, 40 years to even grasp, they approach it, and then, yes, the evil face meets them as a skull and crossbones, almost saying, stay away. Because it's not for the uninitiated, meaning it's not for those who don't know their relationship to Earth, because that is your initiation. The only initiation took place when you were born. There's no other initiations needed. But people get into demonizing so many things, especially if they have a defunct feminine side, which many men do for obvious reasons.
Yeah, the
Right.
divine feminine's just not activated.
Well, it's because they've mixed it up, the divine feminine with metrosexual.
Or
and a lot of guys,
feminism.
and a lot of guys look and they say, I don't want anything to do with metrosexual. That's completely the opposite. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the spirit and the soul.
And the way your
Right.
brain
Yeah.
operates.
Yeah.
It's the same term used for two different states, like we were talking about on the last show. And then also confusing what the papacy is doing for being masculine. You know, that same flip side of the coin, because, you know, the feminine sees these solar gods as negative forces. But how do we know they're solar gods? Because they said they were. Oh, okay, I see. We're dealing with that again. As long as they say that it's theirs and it's theirs, even though they've been stealing, I don't get it. So when we look in the ancient text, which is all I really read, because really this story is not something that we have to authenticate by archaeological digs. This is a story that can be authenticated through the script that we use even in our English language daily. The story still remains. That is the only way the construct can remain. The only way that it can remain is the program itself must be emitted all the time. It must be a constant streaming of the reality. So what is the code? And that's why so many people have been talking about now the Matrix and the codes, etc. And then I wrote the code of the Matrix, but now that's about 3 years ago. But what we're talking about is that the keys to Zion. But what is Zion? Zion means projection. So what are the keys to projection? So we got to keep breaking it down. Now, the keys to the projection are definitely the pineal gland. It's all about projection. But again, if you go projecting yourself into a wall of draconians, don't expect for the whole benefit of what you were to learn to manifest. And that's what we're talking about here now. The last thing I really want people to really, really understand about all this is some people fight over land and they want to buy physical land. There are beings that are so advanced, they got over that and realized that they just want space in your consciousness, in your mind, basically. And this is like real estate, immortal real estate, because once they set themselves up as the symbol, as a cross means Jesus, this means that anytime you see a cross throughout your continuum, you automatically still send the energy or ping that entity through that symbol. So, of course, there was a major scrambling for getting all of the powerful symbols and words and names and places under the control of the ones who have been keeping humanity in darkness.
Well, now that you mentioned that Zionist or Zion means projection, that brings a whole new light to the word Zionist. They're the projectionists. Mm-hmm. They project this reality upon us.
Exactly, because it's just a statement. And then there needs to be more to it. But when you say Sion, it means projection. Then you have to say, well, what kind of projection? Well, Psi, S-I, is the three-pointed fork thing that you see the devil holding. But you also see Indra holding it. And you also see Krishna holding it. Because it's a Vajra, a Dorje, a lightning bolt, the weapon that was used to win the war. Mm-hmm. So you know that Psi, they're from the sea. Then you got On, which is the dark side of the moon, or what they call the nighttime sun. What's the sun of the night? Surely the moon, it acts like a sun, but at nighttime. They worshipped it in Heliopolis. The Anu live there. They are ghost gods. And that's why most of the religions, they still control. But remember, it's a gauntlet. When you traject from Earth, you hit the moon first. And that's why the David Icke, he almost had it. He was like, well, they're hacking the moon. Well, yes, because when the emissions from other celestial bodies come this way, they funnel into the moon first, and then the moon basically spins it or interprets it for us. So this is like before you get the message, the moon alters it and then gives it to you.
Mm.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's exactly 100% what's going on.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. I was having a discussion with somebody on Facebook earlier about this, and they were telling me something that I've been feeling lately. And I want to ask you, what is the next step in the progression? When you get rid of fear, at least in my journey, fear was then replaced with sorrow and pity. When I look at a news article, when I see what's going on in the world, rather than being scared that the martial law is going to come and the police state's going to take over, I start to feel sorrow and real depression and heartbreaking because of the things that mankind is capable of doing. And this guy that approached me, he told me the exact same thing. That's where he's at right now. So what would you tell him about that? What's the next progression?
Well, first of all, I would say sorrow and pity is still fear. And where, all the power that we have, where we're progressing with it and feeling sorrow is still fear, because we still have to understand that what we're really dealing with here is we're dealing with the situations that have to occur in order for individuals to begin to wake up. So it's almost like you may just need a book. You may just need a person that you trust to tell you. Why some may need a few mortar rounds. Some may need 3 more lifetimes. See, the thing is that even when you watch a plant grow and that has fruit and that has flowers, they all don't open up at the same time.
Right.
One opens up, then dies, and another one opens up, is because there is a continuous, I could just call it the Seven's theory of involution. There is a continuous progress that the soul is going through these clay bodies, for better lack of words, that are molding its geometry. So every time the soul enters, let's say, a cat, it now has the geometry related to the cat. Then when it enters into, let's say, the dog, it has the geometry related to the dog, all the way up until the point that it gets into sentience. Now, if we notice with all of our progress, there seems to be a point where you're going up the hill, a point where you're plateauing, and then like you're down the hill, meaning it's like completely flowing. And I've noticed this with the system, and it with the chakra centers, just to make it really simple, the energy generally hangs out. Most people think it hangs out in their root chakra. I wish some people were at least that high. Generally, most of their energy hangs in their feet. And so this equals also their level of consciousness. So as the energy begins to rise up through the chakra centers, this is what changes also a person's outlook in this reality, because they see different. So when you have energy coursing through your throat chakra, you don't see the world the same as an individual that has the energy coursing through their foot. You see what I mean? And then the person with the energy coursing through their foot definitely sees the dismal, dense, dark part of the reality, because they're seeing how the reality is responding to them. While the person that is on the higher state of consciousness sees the reality almost cheering that they're here. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Like what I witnessed the reality do, when you're in a higher frequency and you approach the sentient organic level of this reality in that frequency, it cheers you're here, because it's still happy that you've arrived despite the condition that it is currently in. Right. Because that's why humanity has this role. Like they just totally abandoned the role. Now we're driving around and we're flying on planes and stuff, but we had this role to tend the garden. Like, and the garden now is basically like, it's almost like, and this is now manifest, and this is funny, this now manifests as a story that the Anunnaki didn't want to do the work. So they create these other beings to do the work. Well, wait a minute. That's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We're not doing the work, so we're creating other things to do the work for us. Robots. And here's another thing. You know that war they're talking about between the Atlantean and the Lemurians? That took place a long time ago? No. That was a prophecy about what's happening now. The Atlanteans, which is the United States, still fighting the Lemurians, which are Japan and Korea and all those different places. And they're using Russia. The technology again. So it's not about, in the crystals too, they're using those too. So it's not about something that happened. It's about something that is happening. And then as we move through this, because Earth is still one planet, you start to realize how you can even mold Earth. Like you become just like a potter. That's what they call him, Harry Potter. Pater means father. So we're back at that again. So you become a father, a molder. Now, so when you start to bring other existences into the world, we call them children. Then when you take that serious enough, you start to see the same thing that, quote unquote, the higher beings are dealing with. You don't raise a child right and see what happens, but you just can't kill him because it's just like killing your own child. So all of these situations with draconians and all this stuff that people keep talking about, they need to start looking at what is the core underlining story here. Responsibility, and how we keep running away from the responsibilities, and it's causing us these huge problems to the point. And then what is the person that ignores their responsibilities? They're really good at ignoring things so that the problem continuously accumulates and they keep coming up with reasons why not to ignore it. So when I say, just to answer that question, for an individual to write a book and say that the chakra centers actually put them under control of draconians, seem to be under draconians maybe already from the level of that what power is going to be needed to be harnessed here in order to reverse this situation that we're dealing with in the time frame that we've been given. Because that's the other thing, like we need rapid results for the situation. The more that it continuously ensues, then we have to get more creative about what we're going to do to neutralize it. So this is also what lets you know that once the situation gets neutralized, if you could do it now, it could be smooth. If you had to do it more closer towards what I'm calling now the first passage, because sometimes I wonder if I'm even living on Earth anymore based on how much Venusian knowledge is embedded within our reality.
You know what? Hold that thought, Seven. And ladies and gentlemen, ponder that during the break. We've got to take this one, but we'll be right back right here on the Truth Frequency with 7 Global Resistance. No, I'm sorry. Resistance2010.com. We'll be right back.
Hello friends, I am the Anti-Terrorist, and you're listening to Truth Frequency.
They want to externally manipulate the body computer so it doesn't pick up these truth vibrations, these higher levels of awareness that are coming in so fast now.
It's all visible, like mind control techniques employed in the mainstream media.
And by perpetuating that fear and maintaining that throughout every level of society, it becomes really difficult to actually break through to people, to actually get them to see that they can find this love and this higher consciousness within themselves.
And this often helps a lot because some of the most elusive mysteries you're not able to apprehend them directly. You can only apprehend them by negation as to finding out what they're not.
The veil is lifted and we can see things as they are. And ultimately, we have control over that.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 3. And don't forget, we are doing an extra hour with Max Egan. Right after this, we'll discuss his new film, Transformation. And one of my tunes was actually featured on the ending credits of that, which was really, really cool. Special thanks to Max Egan for the plug and the love. But I had something on my mind. What was it? Oh, yeah. We just did a show with Anthony Peake. And we talked about DMT during that show. And I know we've discussed this topic so many times on this broadcast, but people want to hear it. They want to hear more about DMT. That's what the chat room is all talking about, all the chatter. And I'm trying to get away from the topic because we've had so many people talking about it. But
I think that's our place. I think
let's go for it.
What we're going to be remembered for anyway. So let's just go for it.
Right. 7 of Resistance 2010.com is on the line with us for the next hour. And guys, we're going to go ahead and skip the break at the 5-minute mark and just go straight through the bottom of the hour. 7, somebody posed an interesting question, and I answered this question in the chat room, but they asked, have you had a DMT experience that was so intense that kept you from doing DMT again? And my answer to that was, I haven't smoked DMT in about a year. So if that tells you anything, there you go. But what are your thoughts?
Man, the DMT is, well, it's a depth stuff. I know people that definitely haven't been prepared for taking DMT that have gone in and had positive experiences. There's generally an overall life change. And I just think that what DMT does is it actually turns on, it's a catalyst. So it starts a chain reaction within your fluids that give you the abilities of certain centers in your body. And so, of course, I'm sure the gentleman that is writing the book, I did also want to say that's writing the book about the chakras, because there is other worlds that you access when certain chakra centers are on. So this is not something that a person should really play with. If they turn on a center and then they see something that is not in the geometry of the world that they're generally residing in, if they don't know how to deal with that and see that as just another variation of themselves, then it could get dangerous in there. So that is first and foremost. But for going in, what I always see is, when I first learned about it, I learned through, definitely the greats, definitely McKenna. And there were just certain things that I picked up along the way through reading his literature. And I'm really good at just skimming things for what I just call the cream of the knowledge. The main thing is to gain the ability to do what DMT does without DMT. And of course, the whole body breathing and the breathing techniques do raise Kundalini. But there's also there's a sexual behavior that is necessary to even preserve the liquids that begin this system. So for most people, they generally have to just know the specifics to how their mind should be about the other sex, as we call it.
So wait a minute. Are you suggesting people abstain from sex?
No, probably abstaining from orgasm.
Right.
Well, no. I mean, of course, there's far more books on this that I've read. They're ancient books, but it's very specific. Like the man, it has a orgasmic system, a multi-orgasmic system, and he can bring his semen up through his spine, at least into the Dantian chakra. And this activates a certain level of his being. The woman has a multiple orgasm system that can even run perpetually with the orgasmic man connected to her. So this is the height of what you're seeing as tantrics. But of course, the only way the height and levels of this could ever be achieved is that there has to be real love within the individuals that are doing this. However, if you look at many of the societies and things, the cults that you're dealing with today, they've found synthetic simulators for these states. So it's more of like an androgynous approach where a person just decides to go and do it all on their own rather than finding their external match. And so I guess we're talking on both sides of the crowd today, because many people are not even on two. There's like 2 or 3 different, 4 or 5 different sides to what people feel about DMT and its application into the reality right now. And some believe it's more or less cheating. Some believe that it's a genie in a bottle, and then others swear by it and believe that it's the gift that was given to us as ancient people. And ever since the garden, we knew about it. And we were always in that state, but we've always looked to the trees. And this is the main thing. Like, I guess I would love to explain it from this level. Like, we've always looked to the trees to nourish us. They're like, in major tense, our real ancestors, the ones that are still here with us. And so you grab some bark off some tree, and next thing you know, you're talking to all the trees. If you can't handle that and you're not ready for that, that is a certain level of the reality right now. And that's cool. Now, there's another level that's beyond that we're like beating on the top of the cage of the reality. We're always looking to break the matrix, even if it's for, a couple hours in dream time. The reality is that we are anchored to our body. So you do have to come back to the body at a certain point. But for those who know that when you expand your mind, that's why the soul is like a fish. When you expand your mind, it's like a fish that is now in a very large tank. And it starts to get bigger, and your soul starts to get bigger. So the soul eats this kind of stuff. But you have to also realize the soul, just like the body, if you feed it too much of the wrong thing or too much of the right thing.
I would say too much of anything. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about the alchemy. So everyone then becomes responsible for working the inner alchemy in themselves, like figuring out how much of whatever they do that they need to keep their self accelerating. And because we do have a clear demarcation of when we're accelerating and when we're not. And we call that current. And we call it also currency. But this is also why, even with what you eat, if you add more curcumin, curry, coriander. If you notice, all these names are very similar, because if you go to the East, they know that these herbs basically insulate your system, and they also kind of like fertilize your system, so that when this energy it can even ignite, and then when it's in you and coming through you, it does not burn out your faculties, meaning you don't go crazy. Because remember, we're talking about the great beyond, and that's why I believe we all used to do this together, because there's a whole different thing that goes on when you're with other individuals that are more spiritually advanced, and you know that you can trust them, because it's more like there's more of a stable plateau. And so it's really beautiful what we have going on here on Earth. The potential of it is very high. We've gone through a lot to get to this point. I just would hope people don't get bogged down by what they're seeing in the reality, and let that determine all of what we've built and saved and hurt and had all this pain through. Like, let that go down the drain. Because you see, it's to me, if you hurt something, then there's an opposite energy that has to manifest at a certain point.
Exactly. I totally agree with you.
And I mean, and so you definitely can see where I'm at. So with this reality, with what is experienced, I don't think people should bail out now. I believe that this is harvest time. I believe that all the pain and the suffering of humanity is actually going to pay off, just like a person that's working out. They're working out in a lot of pain on the muscles, a lot of hurt, and a lot of soreness, but then you're stronger. And then you have the experience. You get the badge. Then they give you a few stars, which are like cogs in your time system, and then you have anchor points, which are your memories here on Earth. And some of those violent memories are like, you can see when you go out and expand into consciousness. Because the question was, have you ever been out in DMT so far? It never made you want to go to DMT again? Again, as an individual that has tried this myself on enough of a level to be able to do it by myself, that state, and I've actually also been able to accomplish that through breathing before DMT. But there's a level where basically, if I could put it in words, they say, however much you can take is how much we have. See, for those who like to feel these large amounts of energies coursing through their bodies, it's almost like the human body and the soul, and especially the level that we're on, is only capable of holding so much anyway. But and we're working on how to expand that. And it's funny, and not to get long-winded about this, but it's funny because our physical system ties into this so much because our organs vibrate and start to oscillate when we go into these higher frequencies. But if the organ is not good, it's kind of like trying to fly as fast as a stealth bomber with the engine of a Pinto. It kind of will blow out. And this is why different people have different experiences within any substance that they take that's a catalyst, because ayahuasca is also a catalyst. I've personally seen a certain state of throwing waves of energy and seeing waves and throwing waves of energy into the reality, and you knew it was definitely working. I also could see in that field very large, what appeared to be squid, basically very large, just a brain, but tentacles. So
my
this
journey,
is what you start to see as you pierce through these levels of this reality.
My journey has been similar. It started out, just a few nice colors, and then every time I would do it, I would go deeper and deeper and deeper, and I got the messages of, we're only going to show you as much as you're ready to see.
Yeah, and then I had I tell you, there's another key to this also that I can lend. There's a show that I have, it's called Do It For My Friend. That's the running title of it. I don't think it's labeled that way, but I'll get it to you. But this show, it shows you completely how to make like the quantum leap if you're already adept within the DMT. It's at a certain point, you don't go for yourself. You go for all of that sorrow and pain. Remember that other part of fear that we were discussing earlier?
Right.
You go for that because you start to realize that this is now not about you anymore. Like, you already obtained it. In the DMT fields, you can breathe and you can see your breathing controls it all. And you can even sit there in a meditation and keep breathing and don't even need DMT. It just is like a takeoff thing. So what we're talking about here is that you've obtained really the highest state. If you could just sit like that for a few hours a day, you would never get old. But unfortunately, there's stuff going on. So you got to come out of meditation and you got to get into the world and what the world presents.
I've never been able to achieve those states by meditation. I mean, DMT, this is like a blast off, just gone in another dimension. Meditation, it's like taking a couple of steps out of the body and that's it. At least the states that I've been able to achieve. So what would you say to somebody like me who can't go that far in meditation but can skyrocket in DMT?
I would say definitely put the body back under the hood. Meaning that I would definitely say when you visualize, you lay your body on the bed and you're just open it up and you're about to take out some parts and put in some new stuff. I would definitely really consider that, because really at the Resistance, there's so much stuff that we've discovered that actually works on your mind, body, and soul in order to, you'll know exactly where your weaker point is. I see the system itself as more like a triangle in the sense that if you have the mind, body, and soul, but when one of those are not functioning, it throws off the entire thing. So you can't triangulate then. Basically, you don't know who you are. You're lost. And you even act like you're lost. So, but what happens when you triangulate your body, your mind, body, and soul working in conjunction and charged up, then when you go into DMT, when you take a breath, even just a little bit, when you take a breath, you start to be able to pull yourself up to where the DMT normally has you. But what is really going on? Let's talk about this from a scientific level then. The fluids, especially if you have enough seminal fluids that have been raised in the proper area, begin to raise themselves up through the spine. Now, there's a lot of people that use the symbolism of a snake, that's what's happening. A snake is coming up your spine. So you can see how the guy would end up coming to the conclusion that it's draconian energy, because this knowledge about this energy was first brought to humanity through Nagas. Which is, even if you go into the yoga, they tell you that the Nagas are the bringers of the yoga, and that the people that began in Ethiopia, Nubia, migrated into later on what we're calling Southeast Asia, or just the Orient, and then later on into India, And you can, as we talked about last show, you can see that within their genetics.
Well, that's why I mentioned abstaining from sex, because I find that if Cherie and I have had sex and then we smoke DMT, the trip isn't nearly as intense as if we had abstained from it for a couple of days.
Right. And see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is why when the act of the sex is to take place, then it's almost like when you have to understand what you're really, you have to understand what you're really doing with the energy. And you have to actually make the intention. It's almost just like anything. When you're going somewhere, when you're doing something major, you make the intention. And what's really happening within the male is that there is an area that is located slightly further than the anus that he can actually push in his preliminary phases of understanding exactly how to control his ejaculation. They used to call this the $1 million button. There was a word in Chinese that meant that, but
right.
if someone ever taught it to you, they may charge you $1 million to give it to you. But
are you talking about the perineum?
Exactly, but actually pushing in the perineum.
Interesting.
And but see,
I've
this
heard
is
this before.
multi-orgasmic man. It shows all the diagrams and things in there, and then it also shows how to strengthen that muscle. But again, what happens is what we're dealing with is that the sperm. See, the interesting thing is man has a womb, because we can eat all the stuff that we eat, and then we produce these semen that are alive. This is the real catalyst, to tell you the truth. It's the catalyst even on a physical level, because it creates the baby, and there's no big bang bigger than that one. So on the deeper level, the semen, when moving up, mature. They don't die. So even with babies, a mature semen inseminating an egg creates a baby that is much more powerful than immature semen that was just generated by the man after he, came yesterday. And then he came the next day, and then that happened to be the day that she got pregnant. You see what I mean? So the old ancient men, they talk about their level of potency. Even within the book, you got to read it. It's called Christ is Kundalini. There's a post on the resistance, but it talks about the deeper knowledge that was hidden within the Christ myth, which is that Christ is really Kundalini. Even the place of Golgotha is the place of the skull. When he's crucified, which means that the energy crosses within the brain or the skull, then you will raise, and you do raise.
I never thought about that. He's the crown on the skull.
Oh man, it's all wild.
Wow.
Like they knew this. Christ was Kundalini. It was never a physical individual. Kundalini is Christ is Christi, is crystal. It's the knowledge of the crystal. The crystalline body is, that's our etheric connection. Like that's what the big veins of amethyst that run through the earth, just like you guys are talking about, these veins of gold that run through the earth. Like this is how it all ends up connecting. And we used to be able to use our brain to the extent of being able to, it's almost like a tentacle where we had a connection with everything. Now we just continuously sever our connections. We don't want anything to do with serpents anymore. We don't want anything to do with goats. Right. We don't want anything crocodiles. Crocodiles gotta go.
Well, we've been made to believe
now
that
birds are eagles. Oh my goodness, they're killer birds, Nazi birds.
We've been made to believe that anarchy is bad.
But what's really happening? If you were just a psychologist and you were sitting back watching humanity and fast forward long enough to just get the whole story, you would know these people this is crazy. All these people are doing, they're using the phi-based combustion system, and not realizing that they're actually a part of it rather than outside of it. So they're continuously going through the conflict that generates energy while giving energy to the whole system. So they serve their universal purpose, but yet they're immortal, but yet they live unconsciously in immortality. Something worse than death.
Right, exactly. Not knowing who you are.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so now, prison break. Pre-Zion. That's what the word prison means. Pre-Zion means before Zion, before the projections. Oh, yeah, you're locked up before you learn how to project. And that's why I keep telling people, with things like chakras and stuff, you don't want to exactly lock yourself out of these either. You want to figure out where you're from, gain all the knowledge. No one said you had to go jump into it and draw a star on the ground and kill something. No one said any of that. Just get a hold of the information and start siphoning through it to see where your story is written. Because there's nothing, I will tell you, there's nothing new under the sun, because that's what you see also in the DMT. The sun, First of all, everything's on a spiral. That's what you notice with DMT. There's no, when you look up at the sun, there seems the clouds go even around the back of the sun. This is the level of vision that the third eye gives you. When you look at the ocean, it doesn't look like a wall. It looks like a flat line where you can see the different variations of the green. The full DMT experience, because you also realize that oxygen plays a part, the grids play a part, the days you go on through the astrological positions of the earth matter. And so there was individuals that knew what days to traject themselves. And this is why even the moon plays a deeper component, because people notice that they're more kinetic when the moon comes into play. When
I've always wondered about that.
They become more magnetic. But when your body is not acidic but alkaline, when you eat a lot of vegetables, etc., when your body's alkaline, the kinetics are even higher. The magnetic field is higher. So any individual that is then aware of this, because remember, the whole UFO needs the person to control it and where it's going to go. Any person that starts to aware of this, the body responds and like, okay, he knows. He knows that, and it just keeps, because we haven't yet seen the limit to this. That's why I suggest we just keep on going. Now, and what's happening to everyone else as far as the negativity, we need to be able to go and access the solutions that are fail-safe when we enter them into the reality. I mean, nothing can stop them. What they call the word that does not come back void. When you make an action, nothing can stop it anyway. Draconian, Andromedan, whoever. If they get in the way of it, they're going to be hit with it too. Now, isn't that what the Emerald Tablets talk about? It says when they pulled the staves, they vibrate. They vibrated in people onto their knees, meaning that they came with such higher frequency. The beings that were here were overwhelmed by the frequency. It's almost like going into a stupor. This is also what happens in DMT, especially if one doesn't start to dance around and move around. The sheer radiance and splendor of what's going on begins to basically entrance you.
Yeah, it becomes too much, and it starts spinning around like you're in you're on some kind of merry-go-round, and it won't stop unless you get up and actually walk around.
And then you can also see that there's something looking at you. And then you'll start to understand why the tessellated floor is configured on the Masonic floor in the Masonic Lodge. You'll start figuring out what they do on the dark side of the moon when they open up an initiate's third eye, and what that initiate sees when that initiate begs for their third eye to be closed. And then they tell him, if you don't do what we tell you to do, then we'll open up your third eye. You see, because when they're inside of the lodge, there are entities that they have there that they bring from hyperspace and just place in a cube. That's the only place they exist. So they can move the person into that frequency and make them see the things that are there, and it terrifies the person. The person begs for it to stop. You see, so there's this other part of our reality also. And I walk a lot, and I think about these different things because I have expansive vision myself. I personally believe that I've walked multiple lifetimes through different planets, and that was evident as a child. And I lost vision of that for a period of time. It was like a veil over me, and I couldn't see much further than certain things. And then all of a sudden, the veil was lifted off. And I realize with many of us that are experiencing this is because we're the ones here to neutralize the situation. When I had the deepest conversation with the most expansive beings, when I asked about why some of us that are actually coming to do this have come from negative households and things and bad areas and things like that, and they said, who else do you think we send in when the situation gets to this level? Like, we don't send in like just these positive fairies.
No,
we send in people that know how to deal with the situation through a solution. And the solution means you got to plug back in. See, William Rife still talked about how to eradicate a virus, which was by matching its frequency and then oscillated it until it basically erupted. So this would mean from a physical level that we have to enter into their quarters, onto their frequency, and vibrate them out of their frequency. How this works is that even the systems in which they deal with are not in the perfect shape that they were when they were first introduced. Because if you notice, the knowledge that is introduced through these systems, it's first of all, it's the Arabs' knowledge. People, when they think of Illuminati, they think of Masonic lodges, and they think of the United States, and then they go on from there with their projection. They go Bohemian Grove. No. We're talking about Abdul al-Hazred. We're talking about the pyramids. We're talking about Mummy or Mumu, Lemuria. We're talking about deeper stuff. And it's not something that humanity can stop or start or want to know or not want to know.
No, it's just a current.
Is. Exactly. There's a foundation basically to why we're here. So when a person wants to know, well, what is all of that stuff like? Why is all that stuff so necessary? It's what we're standing on, kind of.
I recently had a client in my business that I do during the day, and he was a former Mason, and he was actually pretty impressed with how much I knew about Masonry. But one thing that I didn't know, and I've never heard the perspective of closing the pineal gland and opening the third eye, or opening the third eye. But what he told me is the first 3 levels is basically an initiation, and it's a recreation of a murder which took place at the temple at Solomon's temple. And in the 3rd level, you're actually dead, and that's why they put you in a coffin. And they say something to the effect of, we can't raise you by hand, so the strong grip of the lion is resurrecting you. And then after you move past that 3rd degree, then you're born again and resurrected. Have you heard anything like that? You know what? The break is catching us. We'll pick it up on the other side, ladies and gentlemen, right here on Truth Frequency. Ponder that thought. We'll be right back with 7 of Resistance2010.com. Amazing and fascinating. I need to get a thesaurus because I keep saying amazing and fascinating so much, but those are the only words that really paint the correct picture. We'll be right back.
Get back on 9/11 and other things later, but right now I wanted to talk about DMT.
Life is a massive mystery, and there's only a few different ways to really crack below the surface of that mystery, and the best way is psychedelics. And the heavier the psychedelic, the better. And the heavier the psychedelic, the better. And the heavier the psychedelic, the better. And the heavier the psychedelic, the better.
It's called dimethyltryptamine. It's produced by your pineal gland. It's actually a gland that's in the center of your brain. When you sleep, during the time you're in heavy REM sleep and right before human death, your brain pumps out heavy doses of dimethyltryptamine. Yet it's one of the most illegal substances in the world. It's more illegal than heroin. It's just as illegal as it is the most illegal substance you could possibly get. Yet it exists in almost every ecosystem. It's in grasses and animals. It's the pineal gland that produces it. Literally is your third eye. No one's dying from psychedelics. All our thoughts on psychedelics are all based on propaganda that we heard about people, going crazy or losing their minds on. You're not going to go crazy. You're going to go insane. All right, all that stuff is going to remove your ego, and it's going to explain to you what the world is really all about. But it's been documented. There's a great book on it called DMT, the Spirit Molecule, by a doctor named Dr. Rick Strassman, and he did all these clinical studies at the University of New Mexico on it, and literally you are transported into another dimension. I don't mean like you feel like you're in another dimension. I mean like you're in another dimension. Now here's where it gets really crazy. There's complex geometric patterns moving in synchronous order, pulsating lights with no boundaries, and there's an alien communicating with me, sort of like a Thai Buddha, except he's made entirely of energy, and there's no outline to him. He's just one thing, and he's concentrating on it, and he's trying to tell me not to give in to astonishment, not to give in to astonishment, not to give in to astonishment, not to give in to astonishment. And it lasts for about 5 minutes. Everybody in their life, if you live, and you haven't had a heavy psychedelic experience, you've missed out. You've missed out on a huge chunk of what life really is.
covering so many topics right here on Truth Frequency with Seven of Resistance2010.com. And like I said on the last show, it is like a DMT experience talking with Seven with the amount of information that keeps flying at us. And that's why I go back and listen to the shows again.
I know, sweetie, and I will be completely supportive of that for the rest of time.
No,
but I wanted to say before the break, it seems like, Seven, that we have a current that flows and ebbs and flows throughout the universe, and over time, we just have to understand it. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to try to fight it. We just for me, anyways, it's about understanding the current, not trying to change it.
I mean, we're talking about things that, like they said, the gods don't control the universe. You're talking about immovable things. It's like trying to push the sun with your bare hands. There's certain things that just are, and with our power, like I said, the big fear is about who we are, and because we're everything. And then that starts to become a problem, and that problem begins to break down a bubble of what you can and cannot accept, etc. But we're still young beings. That the thing is, we start to give ourselves the time that is necessary to make that quantum leap, because it's a certain point, like I said, before warp or after warp. Because once you get to a certain point, you're quickened. Then, if you just look at most of the information that is coming out now, it's not really solution based. But what we're talking about right now is we're talking about exactly how to make this happen. And the first thing that a person really does have to start with is there's a way to cleanse the body. And we talk about that on the Resistance 2010, but it removes the mucoid plaque that contains the worms that have the frequency that actually correspond to when you attempt to vibrate. You can't vibrate because they're outnumbering your system, basically. And so that's why you need an immune system, but the immune system is like under attack at all times right now. The person needs to back down much of the pathogens that are in their body, and then that'll also back them down in the physical reality. See, we're talking about that the current that you actually carry through your body does determine how much finances and resources that you have in order to continue your existence. So this is one of those things where if you get involved in it, you start to see what it really does, because you just have someone that has actually done it already, so they know exactly what to do. There's no placebo. That's what I just want. I just want a little stamp that says no placebo, and I just want to stamp it on things that we do. It's just like we don't have time to waste. We already know there's other worlds. We know there's other entities. We know there's many humans here that are demigods. See, the thing is, humans, they really want to elevate themselves to God really fast. But what a demigod means is a half God, half human. And who is human? Human comes from man. Man is not a man in the traditional sense of what we know of man. Man means earth. Man is like manna. Man means clay. It's more like the mass of our entire situation, which is ma'at, which is feminine. So what ends up happening is that you see how even within our language, there's a crisscross that happens real quick with words that make us not understand things. Because look at now, woman, the word woman means a female, and then the word man means a man. So this means, just if you looked at those two words, it means woman contains man also, and this other thing called woe. Mm-hmm. But what it means is
that is so true. Preach it, brother.
So if you're talking about whether it's a man, it means the whole species. And so these kind of things are what really have to be taken apart.
Well, they're woe of man.
Once they are, I mean, your trajectory is great.
They make us go, oh man, whoa.
Woe is me.
Let me ask you this out of the chat room. Somebody asked this question. Can we ask Seven about contact with entities or holographic entities from Sirius, similar to Philip K. Dick or Robert Anton Wilson style?
Oh, man, these people, you know what? They're going to get me to saying some stuff. I'll blow the cover off of the whole earth. Okay, so check this out. The Sirian network comes from those who call themselves R, which is AR or Ra. Now, the R sign is the pentagram. That is the ancient Sumerian name for the pentagram. It's the R sign, also called the plow sign. And so now you can see that this symbol in itself is connected to Sirius, right? Because the Sirius is the temple of Solstice, which carries a 5-pointed star on her head, and it's where the pyramids are pointed. So we see that the Sirian system is then in line. Then when you look over to Venus, Venus is tracing out the pentagram inside the sky. So you might as well sign Venus up. So Venus is in on the pentagram thing too. So then when you come to Earth, you see pentagrams everywhere. And that's how when you know that Syrians have been running around. Now, their technology is superior. Their technology has gone organic. See, this is the other way we keep remaining behind many species, is because we use inorganics to do our thing. And this is mainly like, if you have a stove in the kitchen, you have to put food in it. It can't think what you want to eat and go get the food for you and then cook it on its own. No, it just serves one purpose, while you, as an organic being, can serve many purposes. So these other beings use organic technology that know how to continue their instructions. And sometimes you wonder, well, is that humans? In many tense, yes. There are many humans here that are running on programs, whether they're multi-level marketing schemes, running on programs that all of them are doing it. Baseball program, soccer program. You see what I mean?
Religious programs.
Exactly. So this is in order for the whole reality to, if you saw this again from the sky, what you would see is you would see it like an orchestra. You would see the sounds that were even necessary to keep certain parts of the reality going. And this is why a lot of people talk about the third eye, but hello, third ear. The holophonic ear is what is giving you the ability to see the cornucopic field and the shapes that are coming in the pineal gland experience.
Well, I would say that my experiences with DMT, the elves, for lack of a better term, when they speak, they don't do it with sound. They speak and create objects. So does sound even exist in the higher realms? I mean, I know frequency exists and the vibration causes sounds, but is it something that's just a third dimensional concept?
That's a very, very good clarification there, because I guess what I feel is more the essence going into the ear like a dish and then being converted into something. So I'm actually conscious enough and have pulled apart the DMT experience kind of like step by step of what exactly is happening with the brain. Because again, I was able to enter these states through breathing, like just through breathing, because there's a whole body breathing technique, because there's a pouch in the bottom of your back. I know we're kind of skipping around a little bit here, but there's a pouch in the bottom of your back in the diaphragm area that has 3 pockets. And generally that area, along with the coccyx, which is where our tail used to be connected, there's a hole also that's there. There's a certain positioning with these 2 areas that when a person starts to practice that kind of breathing, it seems to basically you enter into this altered state. You see what I mean? So through breathing, there's something of a threshold right before you're about to pass out, but because you're so oxygenated, you lose consciousness before your brain, you lose consciousness before you don't need oxygen anymore. It's, this is when you're talking about the masters of breathing, which actually we were going to start a series called that, the masters of breathing. But when they hit one breath, they go out then, like they go right into what we feel in the DMT experience in one breath. And so this makes them very easy. They can slip in and out of the reality. You start to learn more of what you're doing there. That's the other thing. Remember that. Like the DMT experiences, and like the recording says, try not to be astonished. You'll see that there is more to it once you start to get more cohesive. What was told to me is that you have to be able to operate in that state.
Do you think the beings, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but do you think the beings that we meet on the other side, such as the elves, can hear what we're hearing? Because that would bring a whole new perspective to it, because maybe they can see what we see too. They see us just as we see them. And they hear what we're hearing on our side of the universe.
Here's what I notice. What I notice is that what you're really doing is you're hopping through frequencies. You're just, it's not like you're going to look over to the person next to you and you say, well, it's true. I still see their physical body there. I don't think they went through any frequencies, but you're not using that vehicle anymore. You just jumped into another car. So when you get into that vehicle and onto that frequency, it's like you just open the door of that elevator, and the entities that live there then can see you. What I noticed is that I looked And then the bees I could see almost all the bees for some reason in the sky. And they looked almost simultaneously as if, wait a minute, why does he know? Like, how is he on the same channel? It didn't seem like they were like going to maliciously do something, but it just seemed like, wait a minute, why is he on our channel? And then when I stood up and I looked at the ground, you could see all of the bugs that were on the ground. And they're there, but with the normal eye, you wouldn't be able to see that. So what we're talking about is hyper sight, physical and non-physical. So what are we going to do with it? I guess that's the next question, because we still have, while everyone's in La La Land, we have this situation going on Earth that we're sure that nobody will be smoking DMT if we don't get it solved. So is it a key to how we were supposed to figure out the big problem? Or are we going to be just another one of those individuals that don't come back with the treasures? Because what's supposed to be accessed in those planes are solutions for this reality, and then you bring them back. And that's the job. So that's also what gives you access to the higher planes, because you have to be able to, you're basically cycling the energy. So you go there, you get the energy, then you come back down. Notice many people have a problem coming back down. You come back down and you distribute that energy to the individuals with your ideas, with your works, your essence, your resources, if you have some, etc. And then you go up again. And all of this works simultaneously. This is why humans have such a hard time doing this, because it does matter what kind of person you are. You can't just be this shallow, stale person that's just out here looking for the Holy Grail, and then you decide you're going to try this now to find it. It requires like some soul.
Yeah, you can't be a narcissist about it. You have to take it for what it's worth. And sometimes that experience isn't going to be good, because you're not perfect, but there's some times that I've done DMT and it has kicked my butt because of it, because I was doing something in my life that I knew I shouldn't have been doing, and I did it anyway. And DMT will tell you that about yourself, even if you don't want to hear it. It'll tell you exactly what you need to hear, good or bad.
I mean, that's true. That's one of the reasons why I do it, is to look inside of myself and remove that ego and really see the things that I need to correct about myself that my ego prevents me from seeing.
Exactly, because that's really what it is. It's the death of the ego. But see, what happens is, in a reality where people are only living with ego alone, and you kill that, and you didn't replace it with anything, then what the situation that happens next is not too pretty.
Right.
So
You're
what happens
absolutely.
is, I think with this, I just really wanted to say, okay, in regards to, in the DMT state, when the person does have the ego, it gets really nasty, because it's almost like if the person refuses to open up,
well, it's like a brick
let the
wall.
energy flow, then it bottlenecks within their fear.
It's like a brick wall between you and hyperspace.
Mm-hmm.
You just hit this wall if you don't remove the ego going through DMT. But if you go back to our early archives, we were talking about ego loss and losing the ego. And then Joe Rogan came on the show, and he said something really profound. He says, no, you've got to have the ego in this world. You have to. The key is to control the ego.
Keep it in check.
Yes.
Yeah. We talk about that in the Code of the Matrix. You got to jump on that thing and ride it out of here. I mean, it's very similar to like even a horse. Like if you could really run it and you can really, really get it in tune and really in shape, then it can be a magnificent vehicle. It's a chariot in itself. It is a vehicle. That's why, see, humans are the chariot. The whole thing about the pentagram is a gate to a vehicle. It's multiple vehicles though. And that's why when we go into these states of consciousness, we think that we're still we're just basically seeing out of our eyes. We're not seeing as a human anymore. We're not body identified like that. And so that's why when you can understand that it's no longer a body identification, but more of a geometry and then more of a projection, meaning it wants you to give some input. Now, let's talk about input just for a little bit here, because I know we don't have much time left on the show. I want to talk about where are the computers going to be in about 100 years? Like, what is the next step for these machines? Is there a step of an integration between the computer and the human? Because the people get to a point where they want to then command the computer from their minds. and the integration begins there.
Right.
So let's say the integration already took place, because it appears to me that that would take place it shouldn't be long. Within 15, 20 years, something like that would take place in the direction that we're going now. So then what would happen is the computers would reach a level of real Ethernet, meaning that the way that one would then communicate to the computer is through their mind. So whatever they wanted to access, they would access it through their mind. Okay. So since that is now accessing a nonlinear system, which would actually solve the speed problem that everything has here that we have related to technology, it would be the final quotient of harnessing the superconductor to its full potential. What would literally happen is that it would open up a space, or basically, i.e. in a cache records, a database of streaming information about the entire universe. So I'm here really to also tell humanity that that actually is open, that there seems to be a field of endless data that does synchronize amongst individuals who have abilities activated. Here's one example. There's a game that's out in called God of War. And the last one that just came out, God of War, I think it was God of War 3, had a really interesting scene within it where the guy was basically flying out of Hades and flying out of hell, and there were large boulders coming down and he was flying through it. So we decided to, for a moment, use that as an intro to a movie that we were going to start called the Ascension Project. It was just going to be like a quick film about different techniques about ascension. So I look on the computer the other day, and sure enough, God of War has now launched its next game, and the title of the game is Ascension. So I've seen several times, and you've seen this too, several times where other individuals seem to be thinking the same idea simultaneously, in brilliant ideas, but those who have the resources and capability to actually manifest those ideas and put them into play right away are the ones who see the fruition of the idea.
I would take it a step further and say, in my experience as a musician, I have written melodies and tunes which I hear a month later on the radio.
Exactly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so, I mean, so you can see where all this is going. It's going where when the human increases their conductivity, which I believe is something that happens by default, I believe that the astronomical situation causes you're just kind of like pushed into it, but slowly. But you eventually go through the procedures to make your full transformation. And then some people have these other people they're looking at, and they're saying, I don't think so. They'll never make a transformation. And I come to tell them also that the people who are the closest that you think are never going to make a transformation, they're the closest to making it. Mm-hmm. Because the moment something happens that is really out of their control, they make themselves available all of a sudden. Let's just say that. So what we're really dealing with, again, with this entire process that we're experiencing, is so that when we can now recognize what higher frequency is. Meaning that we can then recognize when we go into the higher levels of our experience that is a higher level of experience. And that's what a lot of the deeper knowledge talks about, is that you have to experience things such as earth, things such as pain, at least to a point where you gain the reference point so that you know how to steer into or clear of such things. And this is like something that we have to do. It's like when we're ready to learn that lesson and stop being like children because of the culture that we've been raised in. Big thing about that culture. And we're running low on minutes, but people have to understand the whole Santa Claus culture. Santa Claus coming to bring toys. You have Peter even Pan, adults still waiting on Santa Claus. But it's basically a whole culture where they believe their father, God, allows them as children to basically ask for what they want.
Right.
Like a spoiled child. Right.
Please, God, give me a new car, a new job, etc.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. And this is very immature to many of the ETs or foreign cultures even in this world. So that's also to the Western world. It's time for us to basically grow up in many instances. And that's what's going to give us access to understanding how serious it is for us to access certain abilities like the third eye, certain substances such as DMT, and so that was what's going to equate to us approaching it the proper way. So you don't have the fallout experience of the death of the ego that won't let go.
Very
like, let go of my ego.
Very profound. And there's that word serious again, as above, so below.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connection.
Man, I mean, we never got, maybe when I come back on again, I'll talk about exactly what was going on with that knowledge and how that you see that we talked about on the last show that apple that fell from the tree is a pentagram. Because when you cut an apple in half, there's 5 seeds there. There's a pentagram there. So this knowledge that was given to Eve, which just means night, this knowledge that she gained of how to basically spawn, how to create, whether it's flowers, whether it's all of the things in the 5 base or pentagram based reality. This is the pros and cons of that action. And that's what's very clear in the ancient texts. And that's why the gates are even set up that way. It's almost like if you're going to the source, you go back through wombs of different things that birthed you from their consciousness. And that's why we already understand that the grand being had us all inside of it. And it remains that way. That's why we say we're in the universe. We're just in here swimming around, starting stuff with eels and things. You see what I mean? When you really, really can blow your mind up, you can open yourself into seeing the other energies and how they live, because there's a correspondence of them in our reality. And that's the interesting. It's not always just a ghost or something. There are, when you go into the wood areas, there's a lot of different types, especially here in Costa Rica, there's a lot of different type of animals, different kinds of birds. And you can clearly see that there's something else going on there. And also many different kind of trees. Remember, there's trees that are almost extinct. So there's trees with trunks as wide as roads. So, and there's trees that were here since the dinosaurs. Like they filmed Jurassic Park in Costa Rica.
Right.
So they know the world's, this thing's gonna light up. It's just for us to continuously bring the information, go search the information, bring the books. I got some amazing books. Like we talk about in the cult system section, there's the What Lies in Plain Sight. There's another book on the etymology and how language controls things through its symbolic form. Like a language is a symbol. To understand what those things do is really key. So it's almost like it doesn't become for us, oh, this is hard, I don't know. If we had started doing this, basically as kids, this is what they were giving us instead of Macmillan stuff, then this wouldn't be hard for us at all. But now to tap into the hyperdimensional access to ourselves is very similar to coming off like a Pentium 1 processor, like a one-track mind. You either decide you don't or you do, and you keep going to the next step. That's called binary, to this multi-splendid being. And that's also what the DMT shows you, is it shows you, wow, I'm a multi-splendid being. And then, of course, the fear, or they say the animal body. This is exactly what happens. The animal body moves in first. And that's why you have to tame that thing to go the furthest in any of these states, ayahuasca or whatever. So so it accesses first, fight or flight, fear, etc. And then now the third eye is working. It can make that. It can make you see that. It can meld. You see, the cornucopic field can be melded into anything. It looks exactly like 528 hertz, does it not? When you play 528 hertz in a cymatic plate, you get convex triangle spiraling. This is exactly what the DMT looks like. They say that's the frequency of love, the frequency of Jupiter. So when you look deeper and you figure it out, you can even see where the God's quote unquote power is.
Right.
But man is God. I think they clarified that already. But it's more to me a demigod, meaning that the only limitation that the human actually has is the body. Because the body is the pin, it's the pentagram. The knowledge of the pentagram actually gives a person the ability to understand how to come out of it. You see what I mean? And it's not a ritual and painting things and killing things. It's something you have to work within your mind to understand how to remain out of conflict. And so it's very interesting. It's very interesting. But that's why it's always been related to a key, even though most people seem to only open up more darkness, because the darkness is within us. That's what this whole discovery is about, is shining a light into the abyss or the darkness, things that we have not seen or do not know. And so there's always been a fear of this. And that's why we used to go together. And this is like, because there's some of us that are equipped to deal with any kind of situation, and it's yet to be awaked. There's some of us that can envelop the planet in an entire protective field, or envelop individuals into an entire protective field. Some are already doing it. Some children are already doing it with their families. There's all sorts of stuff going on. And I do commend DMT for giving a person the ability to see some of that. And so that's what we're talking about.
Wow. Where can people tune into your show?
They can actually get us on Sundays at esotericradio.com. And we go every Sunday at 11 o'clock Central Standard Time, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. You kind of tune in, and this thing keeps amping up. We never really say the same thing twice.
Nice. Very nice. And your website one more time.
It's www.resistance2010.com or astroquest.com. You can also try that. We're going to be launching an interactive game called AstroQuest that's going to allow you to access certain items. People can mail them to you from certain chakra centers in the world. Like, we're really serious about doing this. It's funny to me because I sometimes imagine that many of us will be laughing at a lot of people who thought that this was like a failed experience.
No, there's no experiences that are failed, in my opinion. Even the most horrific experiences that I've had in life, I've been able to take something from it.
Exactly, and that's the experience of the soul. Negative roles.
We're hitting the break. Seven, we really appreciate your time. You're always welcome on the show. We hope you become a regular. And ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. Max Egan will be joining us for a special extended hour to talk about transformation and some of the things that he went through making the film and the information that he has in there. We'll be right back right here on Truth Frequency.